Hi everyone, and welcome back to the CX update and another brilliant interview. I'm really pleased to be welcoming Howard Watson to the channel this time, someone that we've known each other for a few years and chatted on many occasions. And so, as often happens with these things, he and I were talking about something recently, and I thought, you know what, we need to get this recorded. People need to hear this and hear your point of view, your opinions, and learn from you as well. For those of you who don't know Howard, welcome, and do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, James. Yeah. So as you've said, I'm Howard Watson. Brief bit of history. I've been in the UCaaS and CCaaS space since 2000. So nearly 25 years this year will be my anniversary. Predominantly working around partnerships, but also in the direct sales model. And when it comes to partnerships, I've managed partners and run teams that have managed everything from huge enterprise telcos all the way down to sort of the SMB market. So hopefully we'll get some good questions sort of coming out of this, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. No pressure. We have shared some notes beforehand, so if anyone's listening and thinking, "Oh, James has been lucky there and pulled some questions out," these interviews we do prep, I promise. And what we're going to be talking about is the channel partner model, the multi-partner model. What's happening in the UK at the moment? What particularly enterprise vendors are doing, what they're not doing, and what Howard really from his experience has seen is the route to success in working with partners. I guess, is there a sort of a magic number, and what do you need to know to be successful really? So we've got 5 questions we're going to go through. Stay tuned the whole way through. Might be a couple of surprises coming as we go through. We'll jump in then. So in your opinion, what are the most critical metrics that vendors should be using to evaluate the success of their channel partnerships? Okay. And beyond just revenue generation, and how can vendors ensure that those metrics are aligned with delivering exceptional customer outcomes?
Look, one of the key bits that I always look for, and bearing in mind I've been on both sides of the fence, so I've been the vendor and I've been the supplier. So one of the big bits in the armory of any sort of vendor, any partnership, is what do the customers say? So forget the revenue gen, because look, that should come as long as you've got the right product and the right partnership that work together. But it's what are the outcomes that have been reached? And the only way you're going to find that is actually by talking to the customers. Mm-hmm. So any good partner relationship should allow the supplier, or the supplier should allow anybody to speak to their customers. So the key metrics for me, James, would be, right, the obvious ones, especially in our world. What's the implementation like? So is it seamless? We're not expecting 100% satisfaction from day one, because it should be an ongoing process. The second point is customers that have been around for a few years. So if you look at the lifetime value or lifetime contract value of a client, it should be getting up towards the double digits with any good sort of partnership. They're going to have hit bumps, so go and talk to them, talk to the established customers, make sure that what you're getting is actually constantly being built on and is still sort of best of breed. So while everybody looks at the bottom line, looks at, okay, what's the revenue generation, what's the win-loss ratio, whatever, concentrate on what the customers say. So when you're onboarding a partner, is it the right partner for you, the right image for you? And do they match your customer outcomes that you want to get? And secondly, as well, if you lose a deal, why have you lost it? Is there anything you could have done? So look for those proactive partners as well on both sides that say, right, this is where we could have done better. Just to caveat the whole thing, I don't like it when you get a partnership where one's at arm's length from the other, because then you're blind. So you have no visibility of what's going on, and both sides can help in a deal, not just the sort of the end partner that's dealing with the customer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And coming through there, if people didn't pick up on it, this is something you and I spoke about before, is you're a big believer in the multi-partner approach. Yeah. So taking that into account and considering that the UK's got a very diverse CX market, how do you see vendors effectively managing potential channel conflict and ensuring consistent customer experience if they are working with 2 or 3 partners, especially if there's overlapping market segments?
Yeah. Look, just so when I say multi-vendor, approach. I like it when there is 2, maybe 3 vendors working with the supplier, working with the end partner. The reason being, there should be a niche for everybody. So when we've talked previously, James, I've sort of looked in and said, look, you have enterprise grade CC providers. They're not going to be suitable for a 50 to 100 seat contact center. Just doesn't work. So whether it's the account management, the support, or whatever, so find out which players in the CC market will actually fill that gap, fill that niche. And it can be the other end as well. So if you're an enterprise grade partner, then you want an enterprise grade provider. But when it comes to channel conflict, the best way to avoid it is just by having a grown-up conversation. And it sounds really simple, but it's often not. We've all got to realize that even sort of the contact center provider, they also have a direct sales team. And if that direct sales team is worth its weight in money, then they should be finding opportunities as well. So you're not just going to get channel conflict, but you're going to get conflict within the provider as well. Because I've run it and done it numerous times where new business rep A has found a deal, and then on the other phone is one of my partner account managers whose partner's just found a deal, and it's the same one. It should just then become this grown-up conversation that says, right, okay, who's in a stronger position to win it? And it could be you have to go down the awful route of pushing partners to deal registration. Partners really don't like doing it. I don't know why. It's something where it can ring fence a deal. So it's part of the armory of the supplier that says, look, if you deal reg it, it's ring fenced. We wouldn't support another partner if they came in with it as well. And getting that early visibility gives everybody the ability then as well to put their best foot forward. But I've never known a channel conflict, and again, I'm going back 25 years, that can't be sorted out either on a phone call or a chat over a coffee or something a bit stronger. It's never as bad as it actually feels in the moment.
That's important to bear in mind.
Just having that grown-up conversation. So, and if you are, look, a partnership is a two-way thing. So it should be 2 companies trying to get to the same end goal for similar reasons. And there's no point in, you know what I mean, sort of calling foul all the time. If you're in early, then inform the supplier that you're in early. They can do what they need to do in the background, and they can also educate other partners as well, saying, look, well, we're actually in there with somebody else. They don't have to give any names or pack drill. It's just about being honest and upfront. That's the best way of dealing with anything like that.
Yeah, sound advice, and that echoes things that I hear from other people as well. So I think that absolutely is the way forward. You've also, when we've spoken before, you've highlighted the underserved SME, SMB market here in the UK. And so, in your experience, then, when we're looking at that market, what are the primary barriers preventing partners from effectively reaching and serving that sector with solutions? And what strategies can vendors implement to overcome those challenges as well?
So, one of the big barriers from the vendors not going into it is it's not formed part of their ICP, part of their ideal customer profile. So traditionally, and you've seen it, James, you've been around the contact center market probably nearly as long as me in terms of age wise. That's a joke, by the way. But if you look at the size of the market, everybody turns around and says, well, our ICP is 100 to 200, or it's 250 to 400, or it's whatever. And you look at the number of contact centers that aren't recognized, the 20 to 50 mark. You know what I mean? There's loads of them. You know what I mean? The total addressable market in that region is massive. Now, barriers to entry are, and I've been in companies where it's happened before, does the implementation fee outweigh the first year's contract value? Quite often it does. By the time you've got implementation and training and blah, blah, blah added on and all these other value adds, it can add on. And especially in that market, what we're seeing a lot of is that smaller, say sub 70 market, that tends to be where they're moving to a new platform. So they haven't had a contact center in before. They are moving away from an old-fashioned phone network system to sort of get onto a contact center. So everything that adds to the cost is just adding on. And you tend to scare the customers away by turning around and saying, yeah, well, it's going to cost you whatever, £3,000 a month, but it's going to cost you 30,000 in implementation. All of a sudden they're like, wow, okay, hold on. You know what I mean? That's a person I can go and get to go and sit on a seat and do something for me, rather than just pay somebody for an implementation fee, which should be bread and butter. So what we're seeing now, or what I've seen in the last probably sort of 2 years, is the implementation fees coming down. The end customer expecting more for their pound. Certainly. Which is more training being included, more development being included, etc., etc., etc. So if people are serious in any market, then it's that cost of change as well that needs to be taken into account. So what can be brought in to reduce that? I'll sit on the side of the supplier. So we want to protect our margins as much as we can.
Yeah.
If you look at the actual sort of end partner, the one that's dealing with their customer, they want to protect their margins. And you'd rather protect the margin on a contracted basis than you would on the upfront fees and the implementation fees. So that could be a way to reduce that barrier. Again, go back to what are the outcomes you want to get tied into? You know what I mean? Because if you're not careful, you end up selling a vanilla service, and you want to actually take that vanilla service and tailor make it, put the sprinkles on top that says, right, okay, Mr. Parkin, this is what you've asked for. We're going to come back in 3 or 6 months. You measure us against that. So tying it all back in should end up with a much better sort of metric around that as well. And if you can do that in that SMB, SME space, there's a really big opportunity there for somebody. The other bits we are seeing, just as a side note, look, we're seeing the decision-making process really sort of cascade down into what used to be the smaller, quick turnaround opportunities, deals. We're now seeing a lot more diligence against that SME, SMB space as well. So they're really sort of taking on the enterprise grade decision-making. So you do need to put the attention in if you're going to make a success of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. And again, I think that's echoed in, I'm seeing independent consultants being brought in by smaller, end customers that are looking for someone on their side of the fence to provide diligence as they're going out to tender for these things. And also one of the things you'll see, if anyone spends time on LinkedIn, it's quite regular now. You'll see posts, people saying, what would people recommend for a sub 50 seat contact center? So I think there's a lack of marketing to that market, but there's an increasing level of due diligence and rigor, as you're saying. Absolutely. And that's borne out by what I'm seeing as well. So for the right supplier, the market is out there to be had, absolutely, but the changes you talk about there, the cost of change, need to be taken into account. It wouldn't be a CX interview without mentioning AI. You're not allowed to do it. I've checked. There's rules. But with the rapid evolution of it, still, how do you see the role of channel partners evolving? Specifically, are the traditional reseller models still viable, or should you be focusing on should vendors be focusing on partners with specialized skills? So like areas like for AI implementation, for example, customer journey orchestration, etc. Is that the way forward now?
James, you'll know the figures better than me, but last time I looked, AI in contact center, there was over 50 providers, the price ranged from £15 per agent to hundreds of pounds per agent.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not saying it's still confused. What I'm saying is, and I saw it 25 years ago when I was in UCaaS. You mentioned unified collaboration 25 years ago, and the amount of different answers you got as to what it meant was phenomenal. I could go to 10 different customers on the same day and get a different answer from each one. You can ask 10 different people what AI means in the contact center and you'll get 10 different answers.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be a space to have a vendor relationship with somebody that has an AI product that is constantly being developed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I mean by, because there's no such thing today as an AI product that's finished.
No,
because it's the evolution is daily, and as the customer base gets more used to using it, they're demanding more on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different way of looking at it as to whether the customers actually want to pay for all that development, but that should be, as we go through the cost of change and as we go through the cost of development and that gets worn back in, then the suppliers should actually wear that a bit more as well and actually bring the per agent cost. I think there's always going to be this hybrid. So you're going to want to have a partner who has AI as part of their product set, that has a good roadmap for 12 plus months. You're then going to have the odd occasion where you're going to need to go out to a specialist. And that specialist could be something, whether it's part of the vertical that the customer's in, you know what I mean, location, language skills, whatever it could be, but you're going to need a tie-in somewhere. The question is, and it always will be, is that partnership going to be a one-off? So is it going to be one of these things where James and Howard get together for a one deal only position, or is it then going to be something that you can then work on and sort of build in and say, right, okay, it's not just going to be one deal, it's going to be the 4 or 5 that the actual vendor supplier wants to keep that relationship ticking over. There's always going to be a business case for both sides, but my advice would be partner with somebody that has AI that is ready to go, constantly being developed, but don't lock the door and walk away from a deal just because you don't have that specialist relationship. You can find it. You know what I mean? It's not, and vendors are willing to do those sort of deals now around the contracts.
Yeah, good advice. Absolutely good advice. And finally then, so considering, bigger broad question, considering the current economic climate in the UK and further afield in markets affecting us as well, how are you seeing vendors and partners adapting their partnership models to prioritize value-driven solutions and demonstrate clear ROI? Because that is one of the things that it's a topic of discussion all the time in end customers and projects at the moment. Are there specific financial or contractual adjustments that are becoming more prevalent to help demonstrate that?
Look, yeah, they are. I mean, if you look back, service credits is not something we really want to sort of go down, but you've seen sort of end customer service credits that back onto the partnership that turn around and say, right, look, everybody's heard of 5 nines, it's there for a reason. You know what I mean? But their service credits are based around their availability. So downtime is always going to play a big part. Look, especially going back to one of the questions before, if you're looking at the SME, SMB space and you've got 50 agents and they can't use the platform for a set number of time or a set number of hours or whatever, that's money that's lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not talking about a multi-million-dollar or multi-million-pound business. You're talking about 50 agents probably doing outbound, doing whatever. And if the platform goes down, there's a huge financial impact to their daily working and their revenue. So we're starting to see that come in. Where we're also starting to see it come in as well is on the contracts between the partners. So, and what I mean by that is how do I motivate you, James, to actually buy more of my product? And one of the things there is, and again, it can be a dirty word, but it's commitment. So if you, James, turn around and say, Howard, I'm going to commit to whatever, pick a number. I'll sell 500 seats in 2025. From a partnership point of view, you will get a price if you hit those 500 seats. If you don't, then there could be a punitive price being put in. And there's other benefits as well, whether it's marketing development funds. Again, a little bit skeptical on the MDFs because I've never really seen a marketing development fund being used to actually market the product that you're meant to be using. It could be used for jollies, could be used for whatever. But look, there's lots of different ways to do it. I think the commitment will play a much bigger part. I think as well, joint marketing activity can be really fruitful. And also, so like we're doing now, you know what I mean? We'll build on it, do a joint webinar, do joint newsletters, do joint activities, events, whatever.
Yeah.
Just to show what a solid state that partnership is in. The relationship's always going to be key, because trust is a two-way thing, but if it ever gets lost, you're never going to get that back. And if you're relying on the partner as well to sort of go in front of your customer base, then you've got to be really comfortable of what they're like. So I always like to say, look, get to know the people. So, and just be honest. If there's anything that's going to stop it working right from day one, just pull it, because you're just wasting everybody's time. ROI, look, again, it's a really difficult thing to measure.
Yeah,
because you're asking the customer as well to be really honest about what they're spending. Also, it's how that can be tweaked, because you can measure the ROI, but can you measure the improvements? You can only measure the improvements after 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So it's always that ability to turn around and sort of almost crystal ball it, look into the future a bit, and say, right, we would expect you, James, to have increased by 300% efficiency over a 12-month period. What we'd like to do is come back in 12 months and prove that point to you. Now, you being the customer, you might turn around and say, well, okay, unless I have reached that, what are you going to give me back if not? That's where the conversation starts. So, so look, it's I don't want to take it too far down a commercial route, but both sides of the partnership should be open to these different discussions as well. So, and have them with the customer, and make the benefit of the partners, whether they've got, I don't know, customer success managers, get them all over it. Don't, like I say, the worst thing overall in any partnership is keeping each other at arm's length. If you sort of hand in glove together, then I've never seen the problems.
There we go. I think that what a way to summarize this as well. I think that the themes have clearly been trust, communication, working together, and you can see why you've been so successful in the industry for 25 years. When you say you've been in the industry since 2000, it doesn't sound, because to people of a certain age, that doesn't sound like a long time ago. And then you're like, oh no, that was quite a long time ago, actually, wasn't it? 20-something years now, we're all getting there. But
yeah, James, it's awful, because I'm employing people that were not even born when I started in the UCaaS industry, and I'd had a job before that. So I'm not giving away too much.
There'll be people watching this going, yeah, that's me. I hear this all the time. But if you guys are watching the video, like and subscribe to the channel. And Howard, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Speak to you soon.